What do you mean?
Well, the Epstein files.
Oh my God. Okay, I take back everything I said. I take back everything I said about Joe Rogan. This is turning out to be one of the best interviews I've ever watched JD Vance take. Oh my God. He's so one note on this Israel shit that low-key he's like, well, don't you think it's reasonable for people to think that like Israel has tremendous levels of control over American politics because there's a pedophilia blackmail ring that all of our societal elites are a part of? Boom! Good luck groipering your way out of that one, JD. Let's see how he weasels out of this.
Were supposed to be released. And there was a tremendous
from JD Jedediah Vance, because he has a couple different places. He has a couple different moments from this Joe Rogan experience that are obviously frustrating. JD Vance calls himself a reasonable moderate between pro and anti-Israel extremes, saying he's advocated for a pragmatic relationship based on shared interests with Israel. Let's take a look.
But again, when I open up the pages of Time magazine and I see that there's a literal foreign influence campaign being funded to tank the very deal that I was pursuing, and oh, by the way, many of the people who were receiving that money were actually attacking me in completely dishonest ways, my response to that is, well, go to hell. I'm going to do what I have to do for the American people. I represent Americans first, and that's the way that I've tried to do this job. And Joe, the crazy thing is, I'm like, people don't realize this. I'm actually in this, there's this massive pro-Israel, anti-Israel debate in the United States of America. I'm like the reasonable moderate. And I think that's what so many people don't realize is, I've been accused of being an anti-Semite. I've been accused
for what reason?
Quite literally for, I've been accused of trying to, I guess, some people say that I've insulted the Jewish religion, which is insane. Like I have a ton of respect for the Jewish religion.
But
if you talk about...
What specifically did you say?
I don't know. I've never heard a good, compelling argument for why I'm an anti-Semite, even though I've been accused of being an anti-Semite by many people. But what I say to these guys is, look at public opinion, look at the way young Republicans versus Republicans over the age of 65 approach this issue. Like right now, Israel is losing the public opinion battle in the United States of America. It is a simple and obvious fact. Donald Trump has said that publicly. It's a simple and obvious fact.
Why do you think that is?
Well, let me finish this point.
Okay, go ahead.
Okay, my attitude towards this is Israel is an ally. Like France or like the United Kingdom, we're going to have disagreements with them. We're going to have agreements with them. There are areas where we're going to have similar interests and areas where our interests are going to diverge. So my approach to this is to say, you know what? When we're partnered, great, let's work together. And we're not, let's just be honest about it. And for that, people attack me for being an anti-Semite or anti-Israel, and they don't see the writing on the wall that I'm actually just the guy advocating for a normal relationship with a normal country.
He's the most normal guy. He's the most normal guy out there, man. He's just a guy. He has the best position on this. I love that he's trying to tailor this in a way where he doesn't get too much blowback from the pro-Israel lobby, because he obviously has aspirations of higher office, while simultaneously maintaining his credibility as an Israel critical guy. And it's shit or get off the pot time, buddy. Okay? That's it. And of course he's not going to be able to walk that line. He's going to come across like these fucking annoying Democrats. Read his book before you judge. He's a changed man, a man of God. Okay. Yeah, he's like, I'm moderately in support of Israel's genocide, but not like, but also kind of critical of it.
That's based around shared interest as opposed to based around, something else. So why is Israel losing American public opinion?
Well, the narrative is that Israel has a very disproportionate effect on American politics.
Yeah, I see that. I see that narrative. I mean, I actually think that.
Yeah, he's got. Look. This stuff is not convincing at all. Okay, it's not convincing at all. It's not going to be convincing at all for many people. You don't have to be like a brilliant understander of foreign policy to recognize that this shit is untenable. Okay? Americans, by and large, do not like that Israel is receiving this level of aid, this level of financial support, and this level of political support. Americans absolutely fucking hate that Israel also gets to have a say in domestic policy. Okay? Israel gets to have a say on whether you can criticize it or not. He's hitting the Mallory McMorrow lines. He's trying to Mallory McMorrow-ify his position amongst the Republicans, knowing full well where the Republicans are going. Okay? Young Republicans are done. They're done with Israel. Okay? It's over. It's just the old base that is obviously the most reliable voting bloc, the evangelicals and the like, that are still the only group of people in this country that show support to Israel by, Democratic Congress, by Democratic Congress levels. Okay. If we're looking at, who supports Israel the most, obviously you got the old evangelicals. And then on top of that, you have Hakeem Jeffries and every other fucking Republican and most of the Democratic congressional representatives. Every single person in the Senate as well. Pretty much every single person in the Senate. So I don't even know who this is for. I guess he just wants to position himself as like Israel critical for his presidential aspirations, but I don't know how you make it out of the Republican primary with that attitude, especially given that young Republicans are not exactly they're not exactly a reliable voter bloc anyway. It's always the old Republicans that are fucking voting for the Republican Party.
Do they try to influence American politics? Yes. But like I said earlier, a lot of other countries do. I think
to the extent that Israel does,
I think some are better at it than others. I think the Israels are definitely more effective at it than most, but I wouldn't say that they're the only.
Oh, everybody does it, dude. Really? Everybody does it? Everybody does it? Interesting.
Only effective.
Yes, really good internal poll just came out from American Priorities from Data for Progress. I know. I will get to the Abdul poll in a second.
By any means that tries to influence American politics. I just think you have to be self-aware about it. I mean, why wouldn't you? It's a country of 9 million people. We have 330 million people. And so, of course, they're going to try to persuade Americans. They're going to try to move Americans in one direction or another. I think that's just the nature of the beast.
But it's more than that. The concern is that they're spying on American politicians, that they're...
Yeah, East Timor, the worst influencer of American politics. Albanian PAC is influencing American politics big time. Estonian PAC. Nobody ever talks about how much influence the Estonia PAC wields on American foreign policy, on American domestic policy. There's no comparison, okay? You can fucking cry anti-Semitism until cows come home. Every American is aware of it. Even people who are pro-Israel are aware of the tremendous amount of power that the Israel lobby holds on not only American foreign policy, but domestic policy as well. Cat's out of the fucking bag.
There's concerns about funding. There's concerns about influence. There's concerns about whether or not politicians are, whether they're aligned with Israel or whether they're aligned with the United States first.
Well, there's certainly, I definitely get those concerns, but my sense is that the way that all foreign influence works in the United States is people try to manipulate American public opinion. And then from manipulating a public opinion, they try to get the outcomes that they want.
Okay. So this is his way of saying, no, this is how Qatar influences American politics.
Say certain elements of the Israeli government want to criticize the deal or have disagreements about the deal. I don't even mind an effort to try to influence, foreign governments try to influence the United States all the time. Israel does it, other countries do it.
Yeah. Yeah. Who could forget the tens of thousands of... Who could forget the thousands of Americans arrested and fired for criticizing Estonia's relationship with the U.S. Please don't mention Gulf states. What? So other people who loves us as brothers, you'll snitch? What are you talking about? Yeah. Yeah, Estonia, Lithuania. What are you doing? That's crazy. She literally peeked open the door, looked outside, and was like, yeah, it's fine. Situation sufficiently monitored. Situation sufficiently monitored. Still monitoring it. Still. Kaya, what are you doing? What is actually happening? What is actually happening here? What are you doing? What are you doing? Why are you wagging your tail? Are you on high alert? Are you enjoying yourself? She's like, I've gotten noticed. I've gotten noticed. Bro, your house is haunted? No, it's my dad is here. My dad is bringing the food. Hold on. Bir dakika geliyorum. Dur. Bu yeni aldığın soslardan ver. What is happening? Kai, get back to your place. Now that she knows how to open the door, she literally thinks it's a game. She's like, I'm unstoppable. No, I wanted the new ones, not these. There's one that's like no, they're in the other container, the brown container, two of them. I don't even know if I can have this. This is fucking fresh produce. Is this gonna make me explosive diarrhea out of my booty hole? I don't even know. Should I be worried? Mm-hmm. Oh, okay. Thank you. Ne bu? Peki. Peki. Okay, it's good. Is it cooked? If so, you're going to be good. Some of it is and some of it isn't. Why is there enough food for 3 people? Because I'm a big boy. Yeah. There's no comparison. There's no comparison between Israel and what Israel does on U.S. politics versus any other fucking country. And anyone who tries to say that that's not the case is obviously lying, but also lying in such a hilarious and easily disprovable way that most people understand that I don't even understand why you're trying to say this. Like, why are you even lying like this? You're just only destroying your credibility. What credibility you think you are trying to develop here, you're going to destroy it.
This very discreet, extremely well-funded campaign to try to derail the negotiation and try to derail the deal. And, you know, there's this Time article that came out yesterday. A friend sent it to me. It's like worth reading because it lists a bunch of people who have quite literally been paid by a former Trump campaign person who was himself paid by certain elements within the Israeli government. And those people are attacking me viciously for quite literally trying to accomplish the negotiation objective that the president set for the country. So
what is their position? Like, they're attacking you how?
Oh, it's social media posts. It's, they're leaking to reporters. They're attacking me obsessively, saying that we should not be negotiating with Iran. We should just keep the military campaign going indefinitely. And that is their explicit position. And coming after me, saying that, people have come after me and say that I'm influenced by Qatar, that I'm influenced by foreign governments, that, I take my marching orders from Tucker Carlson. And there's just so much bullshit out there, when what I'm actually trying to do is accomplish what the President of the United States told me to accomplish, which is a settlement of this that accomplishes our objectives. Iran doesn't have a nuclear weapon. We have the free flow of oil and gas. And like, I should be clear, I don't actually mind. I don't mind that let's say certain elements of the Israeli government want to criticize the deal or have disagreements about the deal. I don't even mind an effort to try to influence, foreign governments try to influence the United States all the time. Israel does it, other countries do it. It's just sort of the nature of the beast. What bothers me is actually when Americans meaning American leadership, allows that influence to affect their judgment and to affect what they are advocating for. That's what really bothers me. People are always going to try to influence the United States of America, whether they're allies of ours or whether they're enemies of ours. But again, when I open up the pages of Time magazine and I see that there's a literal foreign influence campaign being funded to tank the very deal that I was pursuing.
He's talking about Brad Parscale. Former Trump administration official Brad Parscale is a now foreign registered agent for the state of Israel. And is getting people in Salem Media, which is the evangelical Christian media network that Scott, what's his face? The in the closet gay guy on CNN. I'm forgetting his name now. Whatever. Someone will remind me in the chat. Scott Jennings, thank you. Yeah, Time wrote about him. Trump's ex-campaign manager is running an Israeli influence operation targeting the MAGA base. His name is Brad Parscale. They're paying money to Scott, or not just Scott. Sorry, they're paying money to Salem Media Figures, the evangelical Christian media network, by way of Brad Parscale, to try and manipulate Trump supporters into being pro-Israel. And part of that network is attacking. You taught me stimmer. Hey, well,
and oh, by the way, many of the people who were receiving that money were actually attacking me in completely dishonest ways. My response to that is, well, go to hell. I'm going to do what I have to do for the American people. I represent Americans first.
I'm going to be honest with you. I don't even have confidence in the Democrats that are trying to present themselves as anti-Israel. So if you think I'm going to trust JD Vance, you're fucking delusional. I mean, Democrats are also trying to do their rat fucking operation right now. It's just that Republicans don't even need to do too much of a rat fucking operation against people who are Israel critical in their ranks, because the Israel critical people in their ranks are marginal. inconsequential. Do we have the actual time codes for when he starts talking about this Israel stuff? I want to hear just that. I don't really give a shit about anything else. Peter Thiel. Hey, JD, go check on the DMT guy. Peter Thiel Experience. That's actually kind of awesome. That's kind of awesome that there's that there are a shit ton of people who are knowledgeable of JD Vance's Peter Thiel blood boy status. Is Joe Rogan a good guy? Fuck no, dude. I mean, he's mostly from 120, like 1 hour and 20 minutes in.
Feel aneurysms
towards this man. All of these things are happening in the context of the broader negotiation over the nuclear program. You never know where this is ultimately going to end up, but that's where we are. And then can I just say one other thing about this? Because there are people, you see Mike Pence, who's sort of a super hawk, my predecessor, who say this. There are people, who are super hawkish in the American system who have attacked the deal and frankly, in some ways have tried to derail the deal. And what I always say to those people is, what is your proposal? What is your actual argument? So just take the Strait of Hormuz, like the narrowest, but in some ways the most important part of this back and forth right now. Strait of Hormuz is a narrow waterway. To the extent you shut down 25% of the world's energy supply, okay? Joe, you could take $100,000 and go buy a bunch of drones on the black market and post yourself on an island in the Strait of Hormuz or near it, and you could fire drones at those ships, okay?
Oh, wow. Look at that. JD Vance. JD Vance talking about how to do terrorism. Get his ass, Laura Loomer. This was a big fucking attack against me from the Canary mission. That I was teaching people how to do terrorism for verbatim explaining this exact same thing that he's saying. Laura Loomer wanted me to go to Gitmo for this.
Now, what does that mean? Some oil and gas is still going to get out because some ships and some ship captains are going to say, screw you. Now, the United States can help that, right? We can shoot down some of those drones. We can shoot down some of those missiles. And so we can facilitate the flow of traffic. But the people who are like, you cannot negotiate with the Iranians, the reason why that's fundamentally idiotic is because so long as you have some person who's willing to fire off a few cheap drones, you're going to have some ship captains who say, no, we're not willing to do this. So we got to kind of use all tools at our disposal. The military is one tool, but diplomacy is another tool. And I'm very frustrated by the Americans and frankly by people in other countries who are like, you cannot negotiate with the Iranians. Well, then what is your proposal to get people to stop shooting at ships in the Strait of Hormuz? You can bomb them. You can take away their radar. You can take away some of their drones and some of their missiles, but it's just too easy to fire at ships in the straits. So you've got to actually be willing to talk and to try to figure out the problem.
What is their proposal? The people that think you shouldn't negotiate with Iran.
I think that their proposal is to bomb and bomb and bomb. And the honest view, Joe, is that they do not actually have a solution. If you actually ask them, what do you want us to do? What is the goal that you're trying to achieve? They'll say things like, well, just bomb them to oblivion. Okay, we can do that. We can drop a lot of bombs, but what does that accomplish if there's still a crazy person who's still unwilling to shoot a few drones at the Strait of Hormuz? What the president has done, I think very, very capably, is said, we're going to use military force in this situation when it's connected to something we're trying to achieve. So if you shoot at ships, we're going to shoot at the facilities at which you used to shoot at the ships. But we're not just going to do something open-ended indefinitely. We're not just going to bomb and bomb and bomb. We're going to try to use our military force as one of the many tools that we have to solve the problem. And obviously,
It's so funny that he's having this conversation with Joe Rogan when he should be having this conversation with Donald Trump, the fucking president. Because obviously he's here to do this good cop, bad cop shit, right? Oh, I I'm in favor of a ceasefire. I'm trying my very best, but there's outside forces that are stopping me. A big part of the reason why he's saying this also is because he wants to run for president. Okay? He knows where the winds are blowing and he wants to get ahead of it. But the problem is, when you're saying this shit, I think this video unfairly characterized you and Mike in relation to Plattner. I don't care, man. Please. This is from the 10th of July. Please, I don't want to discuss Graham Plattner any longer, okay? The question I have for you is, do you find this to be a productive conversation to have right now? Like, it's fine. I don't care. Yes, I love Graham Plattner. I want him to be president. I actually hand-selected him. And I saw all of his Reddit posts and I was like, that's my fucking guy. Okay? That's my guy. That's my guy. That's my favorite guy. I'm his dad. I'm his son. Okay? Clip it, ship it. I found him.
Bias, but I think that's exactly the right approach. I think you have to read between the lines a little bit, because if you look at what Mike Pence or some of the conservative hawks, like people who voted for us but have been very critical of me, very critical of the administration, if you actually look at what they're proposing, they just want the military campaign to go on forever, and they can't actually identify what it is that they're trying to accomplish. None of them can identify what it is they're trying to accomplish. And I read two things between the lines. I think some of them want us to accomplish a complete change in the government of Iran, to topple the clerics and to replace those clerics with somebody who's, much friendlier. But like, look, what is our experience with doing that? It's
not
awful.
good.
It's not good, right? And so, like, if the Iranian people want to rise up and change their government,
bro, this reads as him dunking on Trump. I know that Republicans have tremendous cognitive dissonance for the most part, and they don't think that Trump is capable of doing anything wrong, and therefore he can just basically unload into Trump, and yet most people will assume he's not talking about Trump. But this is literally just him campaigning against Donald Trump and the way that Trump has handled the crisis that he started.
that's up to them. But we're not going to send 150,000 ground troops in order to accomplish a change in a regime unless the people on the ground themselves want to accomplish that outcome. Now, we're not going to send the troops in regardless, but to propose sending in the troops, you're basically saying that the U.S. military should do the job for the Iranian people. We're not in that business anymore. We're just not. And then I think a second outcome that people are, whether they're aware of it or not, is what I call the Libya outcome. So if you look at the end result of our Libya policy after Gaddafi was killed by the Obama administration, by the way, again, a very stupid decision, what happened? Libya basically turned into a failed state. You had a refugee crisis. You had people pouring into Europe, pouring into other parts of Asia, other parts of Africa. You had a lot of violence, a lot of terrorism come from that. I do think that there are people who would like that to be the outcome in Iran. But then I say, again, what is in our interest? How is it in the United States' interest to have 94 million desperate people flood?
Okay, that's a good point. Someone said, but that's already smarter than Kamala Harris's tactics after being handed the nomination. Ironically enough, if Kamala Harris did this as vice president, Trump would not be president right now. I defended you and Mike's characterization of the video when it was reviewed in another stream. I just wanted you guys to have a chance to counter. I don't care. Dude, stop. It doesn't matter. Okay? I already know there's a contingency of those on the left who want to do their I told you so's. Let them do their I told you so's. There are plenty of smart, capable, and constructive criticisms coming from individuals who I had very open disagreements with on the issue. At this point, it's done. We've discussed it endlessly. I don't give a fuck. Okay, I'm sorry. Jesus Christ, dude. Please. I don't want to fucking ban you. I thought I was being charitable by being like, nobody cares. And you're still trying to explain to me why it's important. Let it go. We've moved on to actual campaigns that I am working with, okay? Unlike the one that I had nothing to fucking do with. We're moving on to actual campaigns of senators, governors, and congressional representatives that actually want to do an arms embargo on Israel. Okay? Pay close attention to those who still think this issue is the most relevant issue when there's $50 million being dumped into the Abdul El Sayed race in Michigan, 30 of which is coming from AIPAC. If those guys are still talking about Graham fucking Plattner after the rape allegations came out, after the campaign died and it cratered and everybody fucking unendorsed them, then that means they just want fucking drama. They want to continue talking about drama. Like, we've moved on. Who cares? If they want to live there, we can live there. Or if they want to live there, they can live there. We don't have to live there.
Flooding into Europe, flooding into the United States, to have, you know, sort of the terrorist infrastructure that can get established when you fan terrorists all over the world. We've run this experiment before. And so our policy right now, what we're trying to accomplish is get the straits open, ensure the free flow of oil and gas, obviously want to keep the Iranians from having a nuclear weapons program, and using the tools of diplomacy and military power to accomplish that.
And Libya failing and the collapse of Libya is a lot of what's fueled the migrant crisis in Europe as well, correct?
Exactly. That in Syria, another failed state that was created by bad Middle Eastern policy. So there is precedent for the United States doing this. Every time that it has happened, it's caused a refugee crisis, it's caused a spike in terrorism, and it's also, not incidentally to the moral considerations, it's led to a lot of innocent civilian deaths.
Now, what was the talk about? I think the number was like $300 billion in concessions to Iran to rebuild. And
yeah, so this is another just bullshit argument that the critics made against the deal. And again, like just to back up a little bit, this is my own little hobby horse, but look, the coalition that Donald Trump piloted to the 2024 election campaign, it was a landslide. We won 7 states. It was historic. Nobody, certainly no Republican.
Marginal victory, by the way, regardless, on a fucking on an economy election where everyone was screaming bloody murder about the economy. Marginal victory. It was not a mandate. I guess the only thing that was unprecedented was the fact that Republicans won the overall vote for once. First time in a long time, folks. First time since 2004. Big deal. That's a big deal.
And had actually led a coalition like that, at least since the days of Ronald Reagan. So like literally before I was alive.
Which once again, in 2000, they didn't win the majority.
Okay. So Donald Trump wins this great coalition. And look, it's got hawks and it's got people who hate foreign wars. Okay. It's got people like you and people like Tucker. It's also got people like Mark Levin and others. Okay. I just accept that as a reality. That's part of the coalition. I don't say that anybody is welcome or unwelcome. I say that if you're willing to sort of help us, you're going to get a lot what you want. You don't get everything that you want. What has really annoyed me about the hawkish side of this thing is they attack any effort to negotiate. They attack the president. They attack me personally. Donald Trump is betraying me. Well, wait a second. If you want to have like a hawkish policy towards Iran, the idea that Donald Trump has betrayed you because he's also trying to negotiate to get a good outcome for the American people is crazy. And so you've seen a lot of these people completely flip on him, and that brings me to the $300 billion point. What we did with the MOU is we actually worked not just with the Iranians, but with the Gulf Arab states.
What is the term MOU? What does it stand for?
Memorandum of Understanding. It's the basic structure that we set up for the negotiation. So what happened here is, okay, so people sort of think of the Middle East as like Iran versus Israel. I think a lot of people do. There's also a massive number of Gulf states that are really important, good allies to the United States. You know, they and Israel don't always see eye to eye, but we're obviously very close to both Israel and to the Gulf states. And the Gulf states actually came to us and said, you know what? If the Iranians are really willing to change their behavior, we'd like to invest in rebuilding their country. Now, whether they change their behavior is something that's going to be determined over the long term, right? We want to see real changes. We want to see them to stop funding terrorist organizations. And also, of course, none of that money comes from the United States.
Yeah. Here's why this wishy-washy in between the lines bullshit doesn't work, because Donald Trump ripped apart the JCPOA. Donald Trump is literally Israel's biggest blood boy. Donald Trump is as big as a blood boy to Benjamin Netanyahu and Israel as J.D. Vance is to Peter Thiel. So obviously, it doesn't fucking matter what you say because he's done everything that you're currently being critical of. And it's weird because this interview is not taking place during the MOU. This interview is being released right now. Which means that you know what Trump is saying and doing. Last night he went on Fox News and said the war continues. We're going to keep pummeling. We're going to keep destroying Iran. We're going to keep doing it. It's unbelievably inconsistent. But it also makes me wonder, like, who is this for? Who is this for? What Republican watches this and goes, yep, this makes sense to me? Yeah, I hate guys. I love Trump, but I hate guys that are pummeling Iran and don't want to do diplomacy.
But if Iran's biggest enemies in the region are saying, we'd like to invest if they've changed their behavior, would the United States let us? Would we release the sanctions that would make it possible for the UAE and Saudi Arabia and other countries to invest in Iran? Our attitude was, well, isn't that a victory for us? If Iran's biggest enemies see that they have changed themselves so much that they're willing to invest in the Iranian economy, isn't that like the definition of a win-win? And then you had all these people saying, no, you can't give them $300 billion. It's like, we're not talking about giving them
The King Roach is glazing this interview. Yeah, but the King Roach is also talking about Lindsey Graham being the GOAT. So I don't know what chip he has downloaded today. He's pro JD Vance, but also pro Lindsey Graham. Like, none of it makes sense. But I guess it doesn't really matter because none of these guys have a consistent position here. They're not, they're not attacking the issue from a principled stance. They're all just a sequence of different grifters. Also, there's the other side of this, which is Asmongold is very stupid. And I think it's really funny that a lot of people don't realize that, don't recognize that, or don't in some way, shape, or form, like, add that into their calculus. Like, he's just fucking dumb, man. That's it.
$300 billion. We're talking about letting other countries invest in Iran if Iran has changed the way that it treats the Gulf Arab countries. It's fundamentally between them, meaning the Iranians, and the Gulf Arab countries. So there's this line in the MOU that basically says that if Iran meets all of its obligations, then we will permit other countries to invest in Iran. That's it. And that, like, again, the hawks attacked us and misrepresented this and lied about it and said the Trump administration is going to give the Iranians $300 billion. And it's totally fake. It's completely made up. And it was done purely in order to politically tank the negotiation. So there's been this interesting dynamic here where, as we've been trying to negotiate, there have been these extraordinarily well-funded efforts to tank the negotiation, to prevent us from reaching a deal, to change American public opinion, which, by the way, if you look at the public opinion, people love the idea of actually getting to a final resolution on this thing. Americans they're not game for long-term, open-ended regime change wars in the Middle East. They're okay with us using the military to accomplish discrete objectives. They're not okay with open-ended obligations.
What do you think the motivation of the hawks is? Do you think this is? Are they influenced by defense contractors? Are they what's the reason why they're so keen on continuing to bomb?
I think with any big group of people, you have a diversity of opinions. So sure, I'm sure that. You have people who are influenced by defense contractors. There's a lot of talk about how much is the Israeli government influencing American politics, and there are certainly certain people within the Israeli government who hate the deal, and we see exact evidence. There was a Time story that came out yesterday that basically there are certain.
All right, we saw this. We watched this already.
I take my March explicit position, and coming after me saying that, people have come after me and say that I'm influenced by Qatar, that I'm influenced by foreign governments, that, I take my marching orders from Tucker Carlson, and there's just so much bullshit out there when what I'm actually trying to do is accomplish what the President of the United States told me to accomplish, which is a settlement of this that accomplishes our objectives. Iran doesn't have a nuclear weapon. We have the free flow of oil and gas. And like, I should be clear,
this coming right after Donald Trump said Iran are scumbags and cannot be negotiated with makes this conversation all the more funnier. Of course, Joe Rogan is not a capable vessel to have this conversation. He can't just be like, well, Trump said last night that Iranians can't be dealt with. Like everything you've described so far, Trump verbatim said last night. Like, are you at odds with Trump?
Like, I don't actually mind. I don't mind that let's say certain elements of the Israeli government want to criticize the deal or have disagreements about the deal. I don't even mind an effort to try to influence, foreign governments try to influence the United States all the time. Israel does it. Other countries do it. It's just sort of.
Yeah. Oh, it's just the name of the game, man. Everybody does it. All right.
That's what we're of ours or whether they're enemies of ours. But again.
We've heard this already. I already responded to this. There is no country that comes close to the level of influence that Israel has. There's no special relationship with another country that comes close to the special relationship that we have with Israel. And this is so matter of fact that the average American is aware of it. The level that influence has over American foreign policy and American domestic policy is so perverse, is so flagrant that the average American understands it. The problem, however, I guess if you're, someone who is anti-genocide or an anti-Zionist, but not an anti-Semite, the problem is, how do we communicate this to people and help them understand that this has nothing to do with Judaism? Well, because every single person that defends Israel's special relationship immediately ties it back to Judaism, says Israel's the Jewish state, and that you're anti-Semitic if you actually have any criticisms of Israel. It's virtually impossible to separate the two things. Although I try all the time, they still call me a fucking anti-Semite. So it's very cooked.
When I open up the page,
how can you talk about politics when Schumer University is on? I'm 35 years old.
Pages of Time magazine, and I see that there's a literal foreign influence campaign being funded to tank the very deal that I was pursuing. And oh, by the way, many of the people who were receiving that money were actually attacking me in completely dishonest ways. My response to that is, well, go to hell. I'm going to do what I have to do for the American people. I represent Americans first, and that's the way that I've tried to do this job. And Joe, the crazy thing is, I'm like, people don't realize this. I'm actually in this, there's this massive pro-Israel, anti-Israel debate in the United States of America. I'm like the reasonable moderate. And I think that's what so many people don't realize is, I've been accused of being an anti-Semite. I've been accused
for
of,
what reason?
quite literally for, I've been accused of trying to, I guess some people say that I've insulted the Jewish religion, which is insane. Like I have a ton of respect for the.
Yeah. We covered this part too. He's talking about disrespecting Israel.
Young Republicans versus Republicans over the age of 65 approach this issue. Like right now, Israel is losing the public opinion battle in the United States of America. It is a simple and obvious fact. Donald Trump has said that publicly. It's a simple and obvious fact.
Why do you think that is?
Well, let me finish this point.
Okay, go ahead.
Okay, my attitude towards this is Israel is an ally. Like France or like the United Kingdom, we're going to have disagreements with them. We're going to have agreements with them. There are areas where we're going to have similar interests and areas where our interests are going to diverge. So my approach to this is to say, you know what? When we're partnered, great, let's work together. And we're not, let's just be honest about it. And for that, people attack me for being an anti-Semite or anti-Israel, and they don't see the writing on the wall that I'm.
I wonder if there's any way to exploit the friction between J.D. Vance and Marco Rubio as like who will be the torchbearer of the MAGA movement, like who will carry the MAGA movement next. I wonder if there's any way to exploit that on Cuba. Because Marco Rubio is obviously spearheading the Cuba initiatives, and J.D. Vance is supposed to be this anti-interventionist. I just don't think he's a genuine person, so I don't know if that's even exploitable, but could be a really interesting angle to even get some kind of friction, to even get some kind of difference in communication. But I don't know.
Actually just the guy advocating for a normal relationship with a normal country that's based around shared interest as opposed to based around, something else. So
yeah, Marco getting Venezuela and Cuba while he gets Iran, yeah, that's terrible for him. If you put yourself in the shoes of Mr. Hillbilly Elegy for a moment and try not to kill yourself, you will realize that Donald Trump is cooking J.D. Vance right now. This is janitorial duties, okay? He's picking up shit. Just like Joe Biden put Kamala Harris on Border Patrol. Kamala Harris had to do border-related shit. That's where this beautiful...
Do not come.
That's where this came from, okay? When you get put on sanitation duty, when you get put on dookie duty, it's very clear that the president doesn't give a shit about your chances of becoming the next president. As a matter of fact, they're doing it on purpose. They're trying to get you to not be president. J.D. Vance was put on sanitation duty. Marco Rubio, on the other hand, has the pristine and perfect, easy to accomplish goals as the head of the State Department. Don Road Doctrine stuff is super easy to accomplish because we've dominated Latin America for a century. Okay? So I'm sure J.D. Vance is aware of this. So if he wants to be president, it would be good for him to attack from a consistent anti-interventionist framework. It would be good for him to attack Marco Rubio and all of his initiatives in Cuba that are utterly unnecessary and very cruel and will not actually yield any positives for the American economy. Someone should get this over to Tucker Carlson, who could potentially Get this over to JD Vance.
Why is Israel losing? Why is Israel losing American public opinion?
Well, the narrative is that Israel has a very disproportionate effect on American politics.
Yeah, I see that. I see that.
I super disagree with you in that. I mean, think about the negative consequences as far as like unlimited migration and a refugee crisis that we will create in Havana. That's another way to maybe stop this military operation, to be like, oh, do you want 9 million Cubans swimming to the Miami shores? Because that's what's going to fucking happen if you start blowing up the country.
That narrative. I mean, I actually think that they look, do they try to influence American politics? Yes. But like I said earlier, a lot of other countries do. I think
to the extent that Israel does,
I think some are better at it than others. I think the Israelis are definitely more effective at it than most, but I wouldn't say that they're the only effective country by any means.
Like Joe Rogan is the dumbest guy we know, and he's even like, to the extent that Israel manipulates American elections, that like, and has an unbelievable influential capabilities over American domestic affairs? Of course not. Nothing comes close. So even the dumbest guy knows.
Tries to influence American politics. I just think you have to be self-aware about it. I mean, why wouldn't you? It's a country of 9 million people. We have 330 million people. And so, of course, they're going to try to persuade Americans. They're going to try to move Americans in one direction or another. I think that's just the nature of the beast.
But it's more than that. The concern is that they're spying on American politicians, that there's concerns about funding, there's concerns about influence, there's concerns about whether or not politicians are.
Joe Rogan's a little bit anti-Semitic. His critics come from there. Dude. At this point, he is probably one of the least anti-Semitic right-wing podcasters. So, you know, like in comparison to Nick Fuentes, who Joe Rogan is a fan of, he's far less anti-Semitic than the average Republican independent media guy. Republican independent media is just two camps now. One that denies the Holocaust and wants it to happen again, and one that's like kind of skeptical that the number is 6 million and wouldn't mind if it happened again. That's Republican independent media at this point. Okay? Joe Rogan is on the side where he's like, oh, I'm not going to like say anything about the Holocaust, but like, you know, Jews are controlling the media, right? Like that's where Joe Rogan is, which is probably the least anti-Semitic Republican podcaster you can fucking find. And then, sorry, I forgot, there's a third camp of Republicans. Mark Levin, Ben Shapiro, Scott, I keep forgetting his fucking name. Oh my God, the CNN guy, Salem Media, the evangelical right-wingers that are super pro-Israel. Scott Jennings. So there's three different camps. There's like the Holocaust enjoyers, the Holocaust skeptics, and also the people who are currently supporting the ongoing Holocaust of the Palestinians and Arabs broadly in the region. That is the three different camps broadly. The problem for many of these people, especially on the third camp, is that they don't really have a constituency. Their constituency is aging out. They're dying. They don't even watch independent media all that much. They watch Fox News for the most part. They're all fucking 65 plus years old. And that's why you see Ben Shapiro suffer tremendously.
Whether they're aligned with Israel or whether they're aligned with the United States first.
Well, there's certainly, like, I definitely get those concerns, but my sense is that the way that all foreign influence works in the United States is people try to manipulate American public opinion, and then from manipulating a public opinion, they try to get the outcomes that they want. I mean, this thing is a very good example of this. So, you know, like we know, I'm telling you, beyond a reasonable doubt, we know that the negotiation strategy that the president has asked us to pursue, and again, with limitations, like when the Iranians hit ships, the president has been willing to knock the hell out of the Iranians in response. This is not just a negotiation. It's negotiation, it's military, it's all these things. But I know beyond a shadow of a doubt that there have been people within the Israeli government who are trying to actually shift us away from that policy because they want to continue the military campaign. And by the way, there are people within their government that I love, I have good relationships with. I hope, and I don't think that they're part of this. I mean, the ambassador of Israel to the United States, I think, is actually a really good guy. Obviously, he cares about Israel first. I care about America first. But there are some people within their system we know beyond a shadow of a doubt who are manipulating and trying to change American public opinion to keep the war going on indefinitely. Again, not towards any objective, but just indefinitely. So does it happen? Yes. But I guess what I would say to the Americans who sort of see this and are frustrated by it, my attitude would be you should be frustrated at American leaders who are, persuaded by this, affected by this. Countries are going to do what countries do. I really don't. It doesn't bother me that Qatar tries to influence the United States of America, and they do. I like a lot of the Qatar.
Dog, what the fuck are you saying? This is like when I get a Democratic rep on and I'm like, do you believe that Hamas deserves an Iron Dome? And they say yes. It's awesome. It's my favorite thing. When a guy is trying to be like, well, everybody influences American policy, like the Qataris, and I love it. It's like, dude, just say Israel's influential and it's bad. Why would you fucking say it's awesome that Qatar is also influencing American politics? That's so dumb. Because guess what? Now you pissed off everybody. The pro-Israel side went, see, he admitted it. Qatar is actually the puppet master behind American decision-making, okay? And they're pissed off. Most people are going to be like, dog, there is no level of control that Qatar has over American policy in comparison to fucking Israel. The overwhelming majority of people think you're stupid for saying this. Okay? You didn't win anybody over. Everybody thinks you're wrong for this statement. People look at this and go, I don't want any country influencing American politics. I want Americans to influence American politics. What the fuck are you saying? Which is the normal position, right? This is a level of moral consistency that you can only arrive at if you only talk to DC people and you have decided that you have this very strange attitude, very strange outlook on how people look to foreign nations and the level of influence that they have over American politics. Nah, that's where you're wrong. Most Americans are thinking, what's a Qatar?
Is just like I like a lot of the Israelis. It doesn't bother me that Israel tries to do this. It frankly doesn't even bother me that Russia or
This is like the 8th time, for the record, that he has brought this up to be like, well, everybody controls the American flow of everyone has a level of influence and control over American politics. I mean, come on, dude.
The other countries do it. It's just the nature of being a political leader in 2026. What does bother me is when those operations, those influence campaigns actually affect American political judgment, because they shouldn't. Because we should be thinking what is in the best interest of the United States of America.
Do you think that Israel is affecting American political judgment?
I mean, I certainly think that there are a lot of talking points and there are a lot of arguments that make their way into American political discourse. I think there are a lot of social media campaigns that definitely influence Americans and affect Americans. Do I think that it's been dispositive on any particular issue? I think that's a much more difficult question.
Do you
man.
think that we would have started this war in Iran without the influence of Israel?
I think the president, completely separate from any influence from Israel, believes very strongly, and again, I agree with this, that Iran should not have a nuclear weapon.
Right.
And
Nah, you see, Joe, he just loves. It's a special place in his heart. Oh my God, Joe, remember how to be a good interviewer? This is the one thing he locks in on. I like that. Look, for years and years as the number one Joe Rogan head, I've always talked about how Joe operates, right? Joe is very malleable. Joe will agree with everything that his guest is saying. That's why he's such a good interviewer in general. Because he is. He's a fairly interesting interviewer. And if he has interesting people on, then it's like actually a fun conversation. However, there are certain things that he hyperfixates on. The only time, as the Joe Rogan whisperer, the only time where I've ever heard Joe push back on guests is when it comes to weed and when it comes to like DMT and stuff, right? And last but not least, after COVID, when it came to vaccines and COVID related shit. Okay. Nowadays, Joe Rogan has added a third or fourth thing to his rotation, which is Israel's influence over American politics. Okay. Oh, the other one was trans athletes. That's right. Trans athletes. That's another one. He will always debate his guests on trans athletes, weed, and vaccines, right? Even his friends, like long-term friends, he will argue endlessly on. So now he's got another thing, which is Israel. It's clear. That's why he's not giving up on this Israel shit where he's like, well, don't you think it's like a lot of influence? Which is very funny.
But
he was willing to do things.
Bombed them in June. Right, that was the initial attack, right?
June of last year.
Yeah.
Midnight Hammer, yeah.
Right. Do you think he would have continued with the most recent campaign if it wasn't for the influence of Israel?
Yes, I do.
Really?
I do. Yeah. Look,
Why
I mean,
do you think
I think again, and I see this, and I see it even from people that are in our coalition, and this would be my flip side to the hawks who have been attacking me or the president mercilessly over negotiation. I would sort of turn this back on some of the doves or some of the realists who have been attacking the president of the United States.
The doves? Those are the peace people?
Peace people.
That's what you call them, the
hawks
doves?
And doves. You never heard that phrase?
I've heard hawks. I've heard hawks. I don't think I've ever heard doves.
The hawks and
I'm not going to say anything. It's fine. He doesn't know peaceful doves. That doesn't determine how dumb he is. Oh. This guy's one of the top minds in American politics, man.
and pigeons, hawks, and I don't know.
I think it's more doves peace,
doves
right?
is good, right? So what I think a lot of people, I've heard this argument, is this idea that Donald Trump, was sort of, I've even heard people say he was blackmailed into this by the
a lot
Israelis.
of people think that.
That's not true, dude.
No?
It's just not true. I've seen the decision making up close. Again, whether you agree or disagree with our negotiation, or whether you agree or disagree with the decision to launch the campaign Epic Fury to begin with, the idea that Donald Trump is being like blackmailed is crazy to me. Because again, I see the way that he makes decisions. I see the way that he processes this stuff. Like the idea that he picks up the phone with anybody and says, hey, like I'm going to take orders from you. No, that's just not how Donald Trump operates.
Could you understand, though, why people would come to that conclusion, especially because of the Epstein files?
What do you mean?
Well, the Epstein files.
Oh, my God. Okay, I take back everything I said. I take back everything I said about Joe Rogan. This is turning out to be one of the best interviews I've ever watched JD Vance take. Oh my God. He's so one note on this Israel shit that low key he's like, well, don't you think it's reasonable for people to think that like Israel has tremendous levels of control over American politics because there's a pedophilia blackmail ring that all of our societal elites are a part of? Boom. Good luck groipering your way out of that one, JD. Let's see how he weasels out of this.
Were supposed to be released. And there was a tremendous.
CNN wouldn't ask this. Are you kidding me? Jake Tapper would drone strike whoever the fuck dare make a connection between Epstein and Israel. Jake Tapper would send a fucking Shahed drone to your house if you did that and you were on the CNN payroll.
Amount of resistance to those files being released, and that concerned a lot of people, because if you're talking about very wealthy, powerful people that were engaged,
I take it back. I'm back on the Joe Rogan Experience tip. That's awesome, dude. Follow-ups
engaged in crimes.
I see. So you're basically saying like the fear is that whatever's in the Epstein files was used to blackmail like the administration into doing the Iran thing.
Or at the very least, the people that were involved in the Epstein files that didn't want them coming out had undue influence.
Well, again, like, say this with all candor, like, we absolutely screwed up the comms of the Epstein files, like we just did. But do I think the reason we screwed up the comms is because we were trying to hide something? No. I think the reason we screwed up the comms of the Epstein files is one, Pam Bondi said the client list is on my desk, right?
Well, they had binders. They were 100%.
This is such an indefensible position. So good luck. Good fucking luck to JD here. Okay. Yeah. How do you explain this stuff? I mean, this is such a perfect story for Joe because it's like conspiracy theories, many of which are not even theories. It's just like real crimes. And it does tie back to Israel and he knows it. So he's just like, why won't the Epstein files be released?
Right. But those binders were largely documents that had already been released, right? So let me try to defend.
Purpose?
Dude, look at this. What is happening? Hey, yo. What the fuck? Joe's like, no, let's stay on this. Let's follow up. Let's
formative display.
Dude, he fucking wait, what? Look at him.
Let me try to
what was the
defend.
purpose of that performance?
Cook, Joe. Cook. I'm back on the Joe Rogan Experience tip. Look, and he knows it too. He went, got him.
Formative display of the Epstein files. And she was saying there's tens of thousands of hours of film.
I don't know what the purpose of it was, but I know that the effect of it was to make people mistrust the entire effort. And what I think was happening, look, I know Pam. I like Pam. I don't think there was anything malicious going on. I think Pam was trying to respond to the political moment. I think she overstated what we had and what we didn't have. And I think that she, got roasted for it publicly.
No, this is, by the way, the reason why Joe is not giving up on this is because, like I said, this is one of his hyperfixations. It literally is right in the wheelhouse of conspiracy theories and stuff like that too. So this is one of Joe's new hyperfixations. So obviously he's like, so yeah, what do you mean? Like, so why did Pam Bondi fuck that up? We found our new 60 Minutes correspondent. Are you kidding me? Again, Larry Ellison would drone strike Joe Rogan.
By a lot of people, including me. Like, you and I have talked about this a lot. I'm like one of the OG Epstein conspiracy theorists. I've probably gone down every single rabbit hole we could go down, most of them today. Look, the original sin of the Epstein investigation, and obviously I'm biased here, but it was not what Donald Trump and the administration did in 2025. It was, you have to go back to 2007, 2008. The original Alex Acosta investigation of Jeffrey Epstein, where he basically dropped the federal charges. I think Epstein ended up getting prosecuted on some sort of local thing. But the original warrant, you go to the original warrant back in 2008, what was he looking for? What was he allowed to look for? What were they collecting? It was not looking at a broader conspiracy. So that happens. Okay. Epstein gets pinched. I think he goes to prison, or maybe this is when he was on house arrest. But like anything that existed from the 80s and 90s up to 2006, 2007, anything that existed that we didn't get back then was disappeared. Right. So like when people say, has what you've seen on the inside make you think that that Epstein never blackmailed people, or that Epstein never engaged in broader sex trafficking? No, absolutely not.
Yeah, there's something really funny about like the entire Epstein saga is that like almost all of it happened under Donald Trump. Like the most consequential parts about Epstein getting pinched again, and even down to the guy who gave him a sweetheart plea bargain, Alexander Acosta, was Trump's labor secretary at the time and had to literally resign from his job at the time because everyone was like, wait a minute, why the fuck is Trump's labor secretary the South Florida prosecutor that gave Jeffrey Epstein his sweetheart plea deal? What the fuck is happening? So that happened under Trump. And then all of this stuff is now happening under Trump too. How can you be an Epstein truther in any way, shape, or form and then be a Trump guy, JD?
What I have seen, and I've looked at most of the files, is that there just wasn't dispositive evidence. And if that dispositive evidence ever existed, it was probably destroyed after 2006, 2007. Now, like again, in our defense, yes, was there some bitching and moaning, and was there some back and forth? Yes, but
it's always. It wasn't while he was labor secretary. Alexander Acosta was labor secretary while Epstein went back to prison. What do you mean? Yes, he was. Alex Acosta was Trump's labor secretary. Under Bush Jr.? No, dog. When Jeffrey Epstein went to prison the first time, he got a sweetheart plea deal. The prosecutor overseeing that case that offered him that sweetheart plea deal was Alexander Acosta. At the time, he was a South Florida prosecutor. Then he continued on with his career, okay? And he was elevated to being Trump's labor secretary in the first term. So the second time Jeffrey Epstein was popped and went to prison, the labor secretary was Alexander Acosta, and he had to resign from his position. What are you guys talking about? Oh. Okay. You originally made it seem like the Acosta deal was while Acosta was secretary. No, I didn't make it seem like that at all. As a matter of fact, I said there was a South Florida prosecutor who gave Jeffrey Epstein a sweetheart plea deal. His name was Alexander Acosta, who then became Trump's labor secretary years later. I did not do that.
He eventually collected 6 million documents as part of the effort. The president, people say the president was forced into releasing the documents. Like, again, the idea that Donald Trump could not have killed that legislation, especially with the United States Senate, is a joke. He absolutely could have killed it. What did he do? He actually said, no, we're going to release these files. He thought, he was annoyed by the story. He was annoyed by the Democrats accusing him of doing things bad. By the way, do I think there is I've never seen a single piece of credible evidence that the President of the United States engaged in wrongdoing with minors, ever. So, when the president says the hoax.
This is dog. The president literally had numerous, now public, closed-door private meetings at the time with members in his caucus that he tried to actively threaten or convince to vote against the Epstein file revelations. He did that shit. Okay? So the idea that he didn't try to engineer the situation to stop the release of these files is nonsense. Okay? If Joe really means it, he'll ask about Ghislaine Maxwell. Yeah, that too.
That's what he's talking about, is this democratic idea that he somehow was a pedophile. It's absurd. There's no evidence for it. Now, the Epstein, law gets signed. We find 6 million documents. We find about 3 million of them are actually responsive, has something to do with the Epstein estate. We release all of them, with the exception of a few things that are like, the courts have said that we have to redact certain things or we can't release certain files. But like, we did release all these files. Did it take longer than it should have taken? Yes. But we did release these files. And again, the problem here is not like anything that's in the files or not in the files. The problem is, if you go back to the original investigation, it was designed in a way that was way too narrow. If there was a...
so a previous administration fucked up the investigation. Got it. So why are there still millions of files that are unreleased? Why is that the case?
Broader conspiracy. And my view is that there probably was. The evidence that existed in 2007... that was the opportunity to get
So
it.
when you say there probably was a broader conspiracy, what exactly are you saying?
I think there are a few different options. I mean, look, man, I like you and I could literally do 2 episodes about this. I've gone on down to every rabbit hole. There's this funny New York Times story that's somewhat true, somewhat false, but where Susie Wiles, the White House chief of staff, says, well, we know JD's a conspiracy theorist on this. Like, I am, actually. I've gone down every rabbit hole here. Look, so there's the theory that whether it was American intel or foreign intel, that Epstein was sort of using sort of the sex ring to blackmail rich and powerful people. There's that piece of it. I think there's a separate conspiracy that hasn't gotten covered as much, which is that Epstein actually, okay, if you go back to the original Epstein guy was Les Wexner, okay, who Columbus, Ohio, was the wealthiest person in Ohio, maybe still is the wealthiest person in the state of Ohio. The thing that everybody in Columbus, I lived there for a time, knew about the Wexner-Epstein relationship is that Epstein was his tax guy.
He's the best tax guy. He's a numbers guy. That's what it is. Jeffrey Epstein, best tax guy around. Okay? People don't understand how good he is. This guy was doing magic with the taxes. That's why randomly Les Wexner gave power of attorney over to this random fucking dickhead. Yeah. That's what it is. That's what happened.
That Epstein was like the genius at identifying weird tax strategies that would allow you to not have to pay taxes. But if you were being a little skeptical, would also say that it would allow Epstein to either blackmail people or to have a separate nexus of influence and control on rich and powerful people. And so I think there's an underreported, underexplored story of was Epstein like doing a lot of tax stuff that was not on the up and up? And is that one way in which he gained blackmail? It's not opposite of the sexual blackmail story, but in some ways it's you could imagine both things being true. I also just think there's an element of he was a scumbag. He was a very sick person. He built relationships with a lot of other rich and powerful people who just didn't have any real moral judgment about the fact the guy was obviously a scumbag. And again, to go back to defending Donald Trump, I know people don't want to hear this these days, but like, who was the guy? People say Donald Trump's blackmailed by Jeffrey Epstein. Who was the guy who narked on Epstein to the Palm Beach police? That's in the Epstein files.
Right.
It was Donald Trump.
He also kicked him out of Mar-a-Lago
He kicked
in
him out of
2005.
Mar-a-Lago. It's just, again,
Well, it's obvious that Epstein was a sick man.
Yes, but if people want to say we mishandled the Epstein release, guilty. We did mishandle, especially the communications of it.
What do you think should have been done?
I think that we should have just dropped everything at the very beginning. And like, obviously it takes a little time to review the stuff, to find the stuff, to redact things where you have victims and so forth. But we should have just done it as quickly as possible.
But some of the stuff that was redacted, some of the names that were redacted weren't victims.
So yeah, I've looked into this, and my understanding of this, having looked at a lot of this, but not all of it, is that it is sometimes hard to draw a distinction between victim and co-conspirator. And like, let me highlight this in a very sort of obvious way. Ro Khanna, who's been one of the loudest voices on the Epstein file. Well, he became very loud on the Epstein files the minute Donald Trump became president, didn't seem to care about it during the Biden administration. He actually brought one of the Epstein victims, I think, to the State of the Union last year, or maybe it was the year before last. Well, like that victim, and I'm not saying she wasn't a victim. I don't know anything about her particular case. She was also listed as a co-conspirator in some of these documents, right? So there's an idea that some of the people who were engaged in the sex trafficking were also, facilitating it as well.
So they were incentivized to get more girls.
Yeah, but yes, that's right. But the idea is that it's hard to sort of, it's sometimes a little bit of a gray area between, some of the people who were alleged victims were also alleged co-conspirators.
You know who's not? I like that he's literally like, some of these victims also did fucked up things. But you know who definitely didn't? My big, beautiful president, who's mentioned in the Epstein files up and down a million times over, who tried to stop it from being released. He's actually so perfect. This motherfucker will blame everybody, including the victims, before he just says, yeah, it is a little suspicious that Trump is all over this shit. That's so awesome. Actually, Joe, the only Jeffrey Epstein victim is not the children, is not the women. It's actually Donald Trump. And that's a brave take that no one wants to say. The only person who was ever victimized by Jeffrey Epstein happens to be the president now. His name is Donald Trump. Yeah. Thanks, man. That sounds awesome. Like, this reminds me of this is not dissimilar in some ways to trying to constantly fucking tie back Israel to Judaism, right? Where it is virtually impossible at this point to try to get people to look at the Epstein files, look at the Epstein situation, and then be like, well, Trump is actually infallible. He looks really good in all of this. Like, it's just not going to happen. Okay? It's just not going to happen. You did it. You fucking literally constantly ran on releasing the Epstein files and all this stuff. So how the fuck do you think you're going to get away with it now? It just doesn't make any sense. You've tied it. You've tied those two things inseparably to one another. And Trump himself tied himself to the Epstein files inseparably. It just doesn't, you're making your own job more difficult. You might as well just move on and try to talk about other shit and hope that people don't fucking pair these two things together or forget about it. Okay? I cannot believe he fucking said that Donald Trump is the only infallible victim of Jeffrey Epstein, pretty much. Even the victims, well, they themselves did some crimes.
And so what DOJ tried to do was kind of make that judgment as best they could and release as much as possible.
But it's clear that he was trying.
Like, there is no shot. Okay, also, here's the other side of the story, which, not great for people who want to defend Israel. The other side of the story is that there are a lot of connections to Israel with Jeffrey Epstein. Okay? And not only that, but a lot of people already have this suspicion that American politicians are being blackmailed by Israel. Joe Rogan brought it up earlier. That's the reason why he's having this conversation about the Epstein files, because in his mind and in the minds of everyone that's like paying attention to this, he's trying to make the connective tissue between Israel and the unfathomable amount of influence they have, tying it back to Jeffrey Epstein. The average person at this point in the United States of America that pays like half attention to any of this shit thinks that the Epstein files are part of the reason why Donald Trump won't actually do anything about Israel, won't actually tell Israel to stand down. That's how they operate. And it's not like a super far-fetched conspiracy theory either, because some of the things that Donald Trump does with his relationship to Israel are so unfathomable and so against the direct and indirect interests of the United States of America that, like, even we joke around about it here where we're like, oh, they're going to the first time Donald Trump talks shit about Israel, we're gonna start seeing some leaks. Because when something is inexplicable, people are gonna try to figure out a way to explain it. And it's sitting right there. So it's kind of tough for people to not make that assumption.
To get in contact with people that he felt were influential. It was clear that he was trying to get people to get together on the island and meet at parties. So there was something he was doing where he was trying to either influence people or compromise people.
Correct.
So it's not, there's some sort of an operation that was going on.
There is a story there, and, I will go to my deathbed believing there's a story there, but I can't prove it. And I promise you there's not some document that at least I'm hiding that allows us to prove exactly what was going on.
Well, this would be a totally reasonable thing for basically any other human being to say, with the exception of the Vice President of the United States of America. There's like maybe maximum 100 people on the planet that can't say what you're saying right now. Okay? Oh, I'll go to my deathbed wondering what happened. You're the fucking VP. You're the VP. What are you saying? It's like Ghislaine Maxwell being interviewed by Joe Rogan being like, I will never know what happened. It's like, you were there. Ghislaine, I think you were there. You were a part of it. And with JD Vance, it's like, if you're that fucking confused, go the fuck down to the files and take a look. That's what's so funny about it. He's like, Joe, between you and I too want some answers. Wow, really? Oh, you do? You want answers, don't you? That's interesting. Rogan fans are trashing the apartment they all share right now. That's
on and how.
He was also trying to get scientists, and this is one of the reasons supposedly
100%.
why he got that ranch in New Mexico.
So a friend of mine has this element. Okay, sorry, I should step back. Conspiracy theories. One of the ways you discredit a conspiracy theory, I thought about this a lot, is try to hide it. Another way you discredit a conspiracy theory is by flooding the zone. So one of the things I've tried to do when looking at all this stuff is to try to understand sort of where it fits in and to, try to separate.
Dude, why is he doing this thing where he's like putting his arm around Joe and being like, Joe, you and I, we're both trying to figure out who's an impediment to all this stuff. Who's an impediment to who is creating unnecessary hurdles for us to find out more. Bitch, you're the VP. You're not some random guy. You're not Duncan Trussell. What are you talking about? You want to figure out who did this. Don't do this. I'm just like you shit. You're not. You're not like Joe Rogan. You're not like me. You're not like an average American. You're the fucking vice president. Who is looking at this and going, yeah, no, this is great. Well, JD Vance sure convinced me. We're all just looking for answers, man. Joe, you and I, we're both looking for answers. I'm just as confused as you are. Okay, go look.
Separate the real from the fake. But one really interesting element of the whole Jeffrey Epstein saga. Okay, so he dies in 2019, right? This is at the very end of the first Trump administration. His death coincides very, very closely. This is not my observation. This is a friend, but I don't want to reveal confidences here. It coincides very closely with the end of what you might call the era of censorship in academia. So back in 2019, 2020, we reached sort of peak academic censorship.
Oh my God, he did it. He deployed the smoke grenade. Culture war. Joe was so close. And he had to hit him with you know who killed Jeffrey Epstein actually? Woke. That's right, Joe. I didn't want to say it. Woke killed Jeffrey Epstein. Fantastic. Thank you. That's awesome.
Where people wouldn't publish a medical study because it might have sort of disparate impact racial undertones, or people were getting fired from academia for not doing land acknowledgments, stuff like that. Okay. I'm not saying that stuff has completely gone away, but Epstein, we know, was funding a ton of scientists. By the way, where did his money come from? He was funding a ton of scientists, but like when he died, it's almost like the era of censorship started to break, because he wasn't just, he was also plugged into a lot of, in academia, but also, you know, he's plugged into the social media companies. Like, this is a dude who knew everybody. He knew everybody. So, look,
So where
I don't
did his
know.
money come from?
Well, from giving, part of it is suspect tax advice and setting up tax schemes for a lot of very, very rich people.
Right, but why was
And
he
possibly
motivated
from-
to influence academia, and what was the purpose?
I don't know the answer to that question. I mean, I have theories. There's of course the
Well, most people think he was Mossad.
Mossad or CIA or some other deep state, whether in America or Israel or another
Or
country, or both. You know, look, he clearly had connections to the highest levels of American intelligence. He clearly had connections to the highest levels of Israeli intelligence. In fact, one of the interesting things the Epstein saga reveals about, and I try to make this point, is one of the reasons why I'm always careful, and I say there are some elements within the Israeli government who don't like our peace process, because there are a lot of elements within the Israeli government that actually do like our peace process. They recognize that this indefinite campaign is not good for them either. And the Epstein thing is interesting because, as much as I know, you know, Prime Minister Netanyahu, not a particularly popular person in the United States of America right now, Epstein seemed to be connected to the elements of the Israeli deep state that were
Wait, rewind. Vance admitted.
Look, he clearly had connections to the highest levels of American intelligence.
Yeah, no, he admits it, but no, hold on. Look at how he pieces it back. No, listen. He admits that Jeffrey Epstein was connected to the Israeli state. He admits that Jeffrey Epstein was connected to the American. First, he said Epstein did woke. Shut up! Stop demanding that I rewind. I know he said Jeffrey Epstein invented woke. Okay. Then he said Epstein is connected to the highest levels of the American government and highest levels of the Israeli government. Okay. But watch how he ties it back. This is how the Israeli government, or at least the Likud government, talks about the Epstein files. Okay.
He clearly had connections to the highest levels of Israeli intelligence. In fact, one of the interesting things the Epstein saga reveals about, and I try to make this point, is one of the reasons why I'm
if you want to rewind, all you need to do is subscribe. By the way, the Piker Broadcasting Service is sponsored by you, the people. Support independent media. Support the Piker Broadcasting Service. The People's Broadcasting Service for tomorrow's news today, sometimes yesterday's news today as well. And of course, if we situation monitor around these parts, we get to level 10 hype train. We like to carry the flame. We haven't really carried the flame in a minute. So, you know, we could carry the flame today potentially. Closed presence with 100 gifted subs. Oh my God, the strait is closed, but closed presence is back.
always careful, and I say there are some elements within the Israeli government who don't like our peace process, because there are a lot of elements within the Israeli government that actually do like our peace process. They recognize that this indefinite campaign is not good for them either. And the Epstein thing is interesting because, as much as I know,
to the tax fraud. Thank you for the 5
Prime
gifted.
Minister Netanyahu, not a particularly popular person in the United States of America right now, Epstein seemed to be connected to the elements of the Israeli deep state that were left of center. Like, I've always found that.
Yeah, see? He's doing the same fucking thing. This is how Benjamin Netanyahu talked about the Epstein files. He literally said it was Ehud Barak. It's the woke libtards. Jeffrey Epstein is a woke libtard phenomena. Okay. No, Hassan, you missed. He asked about Mossad. Oh my God. Yes. Okay. He asked about Mossad and he said, yes, Jeffrey Epstein could be Mossad. Is that what do you want me to see? Is that what you want? Is that what you fucking want, dude? You want me to go back here? Should we start here again? Jesus fucking Christ. I don't want to rewind. Oh my God. What commie says? Thank you for the 50 bones. Fuck it, dude. Let's start here.
Joe Rogan Podcast. Check it out.
The Joe Rogan Experience.
Train by day, Joe Rogan Podcast by night.
We're done. I'm done with the Joe Rogan Experience. Okay? I'm done. I'm done with the Joe Rogan Experience. I'm moving on. Okay?